We are back with another video talking about all the latest NHL trade and free agent rumors. Tonight we're looking at guys like Jack Eichel, Seth Jones, Vladimir Tarasenko. Will Carey Price go to Seattle? Where would Nick Foligno end up as a free agent? And Ryan Strome with the Rangers could be on the move as well. We'll discuss all that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned, we have a variety of news and rumors to talk about here today. Of course, we have the expansion draft, which is now basically in progress here. We'll get the full results on Wednesday, and we do have a roster freeze between now and then. So there won't be any trades for at least a few more days, but there's a lot of speculation on players who were rumored to be on the move and didn't happen yet, and we're likely going to see after expansion up until the NHL entry draft. And of course, some of these plans could be kind of changed here by the expansion draft, because there is a lot of good names available. So it's going to be interesting to see how everything kind of plays out here. Now, first up, I want to talk about Carey Price. Now, Price is a player who was a surprising last-minute no-move clause waiving to get him available for expansion and protect Jake Eichel in Montreal. We reported that last night in a video. Some pretty surprising news, but we did find out more about that scenario just in the last little while here. Now, of course, last night as well, I noticed there was a post by his wife, Angela, on her Instagram, I believe it was, saying that for Habs fans not to worry, essentially that there'd be more information explaining things further shortly. So we now know a little bit more about what she's talking about. So it's now being reported by Frank Seravalli of dailyfaceoff.com, indicating that it looks like Carey Price has some hip issues and might be out for an extended period of time, or at the very least may not be ready to go for the start of next season. With the shortened off season, it's quite likely that he will miss at least the beginning, but it's hard to say. It could be significant. So essentially, an MRI has revealed some hip damage that might require surgery. Carey Price is going to be seeing another hip specialist in the U.S. sometime in the next few days. Now, I guess the interesting part about this is that by the time he has that appointment and results are known, it's going to be after the expansion draft. We're probably looking at like Friday. So Seattle is going to have to make a decision on whether or not to claim Price or not, with the limited information on the said injury. Now, there's a lot of people saying that Seattle won't touch him because of his contract. That is possible, but at the same time, you're starting a brand new franchise and you have the option to get a quality goaltender like Carey Price. Has been around the league a long time, just came off a Stanley Cup final. Awesome run here with Montreal. Would you not consider it? I mean, you have to think about it. And according to Pierre LeBrun of TSN and The Athletic, he said that the Kraken are thinking long and hard about this. This is not something that's going to be taken lightly. They probably didn't realize up until the last minute that this was even going to be an option for them. So I still think the odds are in favor of him staying in Montreal. Of course, the same goes for Shea Weber. He's also exposed. But because of the health concerns in the contracts, there's a pretty good chance that Montreal will go unscathed in that regard, at least, and lose a different player to the Seattle Kraken. There's some people online here on Twitter, I've noticed a lot saying, well, what if the Kraken can take Price, retain some salary, and trade him back? And like, no, you cannot do that. That's considered a circumvention of the rules. You cannot trade a player back to the team that you just took him from in the expansion draft. I mean, you can trade a player afterwards, but in the case of Carey Price, his no-move clause is still in effect for any trades, so Seattle would have to have his consent to move him anywhere else, and he could not be traded back to Montreal, regardless of who wanted to or not. So that is not going to happen. He'll either go to Seattle or he'll not. He'll stay in Montreal. Of course, he has ties to that area. He played his junior hockey in the WHL for Tri-City Americans, which is in Washington State. That's where he met his wife, so she's from that area. It's not far from where he's from in Anaheim Lake, BC. So, I mean, if he were to play anywhere else in the NHL, I can see how Seattle would be a good fit for family purposes. But there's a lot of other things to consider here. So we'll see. It is probably unlikely that Seattle makes this claim and takes Carey Price. But, you have to think long and hard about this if you're Ron Francis and the team here making this big decision, which could be costly, but it could turn out great as well. I mean, there's a lot of big names available, so we'll have to see here in a few days. It's going to be very interesting to see who are the original members of the Kraken going into next season. Now, one other quick note here on the expansion draft. I found it very interesting the Buffalo Sabres still protected a player who's a UFA, who's Linus Ullmark, their, last year's main goaltender. Now, of course, Ullmark is not guaranteed to re-sign with them, and there's some insiders say that they feel it's probably unlikely that he returns and signs a new contract. So why would they protect him? I mean, obviously, for one, they didn't have a lot of other options. Based on their rosters, they didn't really have anything else worth protecting. So you could say that for starters. They had to expose somebody, right? But the other thing that I don't understand, with all the goalies that could have been on the move that were rumored to be considered to be traded, I don't understand how they couldn't have picked up a goalie on another team for a fairly cheap price. I mean, that's something that I thought Kevin Adams would take advantage of, and he didn't. And I just found that interesting, and we'll have to stay tuned. Now, if they do indeed sign Allmark, okay, maybe it makes sense, but it's not a given, and many feel it's unlikely. So we'll see what happens. I thought it was a missed opportunity there for Buffalo. Now, another player that's available in expansion, but could still be on the move, if not through expansion, then via trade, is Blues forward Vladimir Tarasenko. There's all kinds of talk around this player. That relationship is completely unrepairable based on what everybody's saying. And if they really thought that they were going to be able to get a trade done for sure, and not have any uncertainty around that, or they were really debating not trading him or whatever, if that relationship could be repaired, then he wouldn't be available in expansion. But he is. So obviously they want to do everything they can to help him move on to another team. And if he does go to Seattle, it's not a given he stays there. He could, but the Flyers are a team that's reportedly very, very interested here. Now, we've seen them acquire Ryan Ellis on defense. I think their defense maneuvering is not maybe completely done, but the big part of it, the heavy lifting's done. And they are rumored to want to shake up their core, so they have exposed Jake Voracek and JVR. If Seattle takes one of them, then regardless if Tarasenko goes to Seattle or not, they're going to be in a better situation to make an acquisition, and they're believed to be a player. Now, Seattle also could be a broker. They could make a side deal, which is a lot of the discussions that are taking place now that these lists are made available to everybody, saying, if you take this player, we'll then work out a trade with you, because Seattle's allowed to trade. They just can't announce it and make it official until Wednesday when the expansion draft takes place. But it is possible that the Flyers, the Kraken, and kind of the Blues being involved would have like a deal in place where Tarasenko goes to the Kraken, and the Kraken later trade him to Philly, in exchange for expansion draft considerations or what have you. So there is that possibility. So Tarasenko is still going to be moved. I think the return is going to be a lot less than the Blues are probably hoping for. The fact that a deal didn't get done ahead of time goes to show that his value is not maybe as high as it once was. Obviously, there's no big surprise there, in that it's a real possibility that teams are leery of his injury history. But at the same time, a lot of teams are also leery with the fact of their protection issues. So it is possibly more likely that something happens. So I don't know if Seattle takes him or not. I guess we'll see how they feel about the risk associated with Tarasenko. But there's still a chance that if he goes to Seattle, he still gets traded. And I would watch the Flyers, as what's being reported here, as the main team who can make an acquisition afterwards. Now, when it comes to Seth Jones, of course, where's Seth Jones going to end up now? Well, a deal's still going to get done. There's no doubt. He was protected for expansion draft purposes because he has good trade value. He's not going to Philly anymore. We knew that was probably dead anyways. And when they traded for Ryan Ellis, I just 100% confirmed it. Of course, we're going to have to see what other teams do here. But to me, the main teams that are likely to make it happen, if it's going to be done soon enough here, would be the Avalanche and or the Chicago Blackhawks. Of course, the Blackhawks acquired his brother Caleb. I still think that's a possible fit that we could see. And there's still the Dallas Stars too, but after signing that mega contract for Heiskanen, I do wonder what their capacity will be for their blue line here. They might have to move out another guy to bring in a Jones. Maybe they trade Klingberg, bring in Jones that way. I'm not sure. That's a possibility, because obviously Dallas, being in his home state of Texas, is appealing and apparently is one of the teams he'd consider signing with on an extension. So we'll have to see on that as well. I'm not really clear on where they stand with the Jones situation, but to me, Dallas is a possibility because of that. But otherwise, the Avalanche and the Hawks seem to be the front runners, and I would suspect a deal gets done either right before, leading into it, or like maybe the day of the draft, before the first round gets too far along, because I would suspect that it's quite possible a higher first round pick could be included here in this Jones type of trade. Now, another potential move coming is the New York Rangers, and we're going to see them possibly do some maneuvering in a variety of ways. It's been rumored today through Andy Strickland saying that Ryan Strome's name is out there in the trade rumor mill, that he's getting some attention, that the Rangers are having some conversations around him, and that he could be moved here after expansion as well. Of course, nothing happened beforehand, and he was protected, so he's not going to Seattle. We know that much. But still, the Rangers are a team that we've seen make a couple of deals leading into that deadline of the roster freeze, where they moved Brett Howden, they acquired Barclay Goodrow. They're kind of maneuvering themselves here where they could end up losing a player like possibly like a Blackwell or something like that in expansion. Kind of hard to say. They're going to buy out D'Angelo. We know that. To me, they're a team that's still a front runner for Jack Eichel, and if they trade Ryan Strome, that's just another signal that they're leading everything up, trying to make not only the roster space, but the cap space to justify everything here as well. So, I mean, I can't say with certainty he goes to the Rangers, but based on what I've been told, I do think it's fair to say that the Rangers are certainly a front runner. I think they've got some good packages that they've offered. It's not going to include some of the biggest names like you might think, like a Lafreniere or a Kakko. They will not be included. Even a guy like a K'Andre Miller wouldn't be either. But they do have lots of other interesting pieces. You're going to see at least one or two roster players, likely a guy like Buchnevich, possibly a guy like Georgiev be included. You're going to see some good defensive prospects like a Robertson for sure, maybe a Zach Jones, another player who would likely be included, and there likely would be a first-round pick, and there could even be an additional piece here as well. So you're looking at probably, 5 pieces in all. Then to me, the Rangers would stand an excellent chance to get that done. But to me, that's something that likely could happen before the draft. But if the Ryan Strome trade rumors are true, and I don't think he would be likely a piece going to Buffalo, but you never know. It could fall up to be that way. But at this point, we haven't heard any linkage in those conversations right now. But Ryan Strome apparently was getting interest from the Ottawa Senators. Now, they're rumored to want to add a top 6 capable center to kind of insulate their young guys a little bit. I mean, Josh Norris did a great job last year. Shane Pinto came in after leaving college at the end of the year, did a great job as well. But you know what? To have a good veteran guy who's, certainly an upgrade on a guy like Derek Stepan that they had last year, who could actually play, teach them a little bit, be a good mentor, not making a ton of money on a long-term deal. Could be a good placeholder. Like, to me, that could be a good fit. So we'll see what happens. There's other teams that are showing interest too. They're not the only ones, but the Senators had been rumored to looking into that kind of type of player, and it makes sense here, especially if they're making additional maneuvers to make a run at an Eichel trade here in the next week or so. And of course, another team to watch here as well is the New York Islanders. GM Lou Lamoriello has been working his magic lately. Certainly left a couple of more big names available in expansion. After moving on from Ladd, after moving on from Leddy, they now have guys like Jordan Eberle and Josh Bailey both available in expansion. If they lose another decent-sized contract to the Kraken, if they take one of those guys, then that's really going to just enhance the ability here for the Islanders to go after a big-time scorer to play with a guy like Matthew Barzal, which is their main goal here. Now, of course, they've been linked to Tarasenko. We'll see about that. One thing they would likely do quickly, if they can, would be to re-sign Kyle Palmieri, and it may not go a whole lot further than that, but I know they want to add a dynamic player who can play with Barzal, and it very well could be a guy like Johnny Gaudreau if he's available via trade. It could be a guy like Gabe Landeskog if he hits free agency. Not to say for sure that they're definite front runners for either of those guys, but they have reportedly have interest in those guys, and there's other guys out there on the market too. Now, when it comes to Landeskog, I wouldn't completely rule out Seattle getting in the mix there, but many still feel the Blues are the front runners should he not get something worked out with the Avalanche ahead of free agency. So we'll see about that. And lastly here, Nick Foligno, of course, he was traded to the Maple Leafs at the deadline. He is a player to watch as well. Many thought he would go back to Columbus, maybe stay in Toronto on a cheap deal, but that wasn't likely. Going back to the Jackets was the most likely scenario. Most saw, is the most likely happening. But now many are saying, which makes sense as well, that he's very likely to end up with the Minnesota Wild and have a chance to go play with his brother Marcus. So the Foligno brothers could both be in Minnesota come next season. I would suspect that the deal for Nick wouldn't be overly long and it wouldn't be overly expensive. But it's, you're probably looking at a couple-year deal. I'm not sure exactly what the money is going to be, but still, it could be a scenario where they get to play together, which is, I'm sure, something they've been dreaming about since they were kids. So we'll see what happens. I wouldn't completely rule out going back to Columbus, but right now all signs point to Minnesota. So we'll see on that. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news and rumors on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.